Welcome back. We have another amazing episode. This one I'm very excited about. I think I woke up just a few days ago. I'm like, we have to do this.
Yes.
And I want to explore the orgasm gap, what it is, why it's so popular, why everybody's talking about it.
Frankly, I'm sick and tired of hearing people saying there's no solution for it, but
that's the thing.
We'll get into that a little bit.
But there is a solution, isn't there?
Yes. Well, I mean, that's the reason why I'm sick and tired of it, is because not only have we seen this with client after client after client over many years, we're talking beyond the hundreds, beyond any other study that's been out there, but we've also done a study of 111 people where the orgasm gap disappeared. So it has a solution.
There is a solution.
There is a solution. It's
so we're just tired. We want to talk about it because we're tired of hearing that there's still no solution and it's still this horrible thing.
I mean, it's in all the newspapers. It's on everybody on Instagram.
Every
talking about
podcast that talks about it.
It's stated like a fact.
It's a fact. Here's the orgasm gap, and it's unsolvable. It's never been solved, and maybe it will never be solved.
And the truth is, there is a gap.
Yeah.
But the issue with it is that they're saying that it's not solved.
That's the thing that we take issue with because we actually have solved it. So that's what this episode's going to be all about.
And if I were to go into also some like kind of second, third, and fourth reasons of why I find that irritating is because in this, it's also sort of weaponized a bit.
Tell me more.
What I mean by that is that a lot of times they're going to vilify this or take this as a reason to vilify then heterosexual relationships.
Yes, we hear that a lot. Like it's the heteronormative penis to vagina. That's the problem. It's the fault. The women are not satisfied. They're not, being able to come to orgasm. The man can come every time, but the woman, she can't. You hear this a lot, and I don't like it because the majority of the planet is going to be doing that.
Yes, and I mean, for me, it's not even a matter of I don't like it. It's just, it's inaccurate. Mm-hmm. The problem isn't a heterosexual, and let's frankly put it out there, a heterosexual toxic masculinity problem, which is what they're promoting this as. It is a penetration problem.
It's a penetration education problem.
Yes, because people are working against our own body mechanics,
exactly.
The way we go about penetration.
Yeah, and that's why I'm so excited about this episode. And I'm excited to, I guess we'll get into like the problems of why it's there.
Well, let's go into, to give a little structure, let's go into like what it is first of all.
Okay.
And before we move on to that though, I just want to say that the reason why we realize that this isn't just a heterosexual problem, but a penetration problem is because we have clients that are lesbian. We have clients that are gay, men to men. We have clients that are bisexual. We have clients that are of all age ranges, heterosexual, etc.
Any orientation.
And where the problem comes up with is penetration. Mm-hmm. And people are wanting to do it. This isn't just toxic men that want to do penetration.
I have to say, when we were doing the study to get the IRB approval for the study, they didn't approve it initially. They're like, penetration is very heteronormative. I'm like, excuse me? Do you not understand gay sex? I mean...
We had people on the team who were like...
who are gay.
I'm gay and this is what I do. I mean...
Yes. So anyways, that got fixed very quickly. But I also just noticed that there's too much of that focus. And so today I want to bring it back to bodies that enjoy penetration, whether they're penetrating or being penetrated, and whether it's mouth, whether it's a vagina or an anus, whatever it might be, an armpit, penetration, having the joy of it, the curiosity of it, but all the things that actually, the obstacles of it that are in the way of people having a really great time with the act of penetration.
Exactly, which then brings up the other point is not only do they use this to vilify heteronormative relationships, as if it's just them. They use it to vilify heteronormative relationships. They use the study to also vilify penetration itself. And then they also use it to come up with the solution, which, by the way, is to promote products, which takes us further away from our body. And I love products. I love tools and different things. But it's like with a mobile phone. If I sit there, I love that I have a mobile phone and I can call and talk to you from a distance, but if that means I can no longer talk to you person by person, then now all of a sudden...
Don't like the phone.
I do have an issue with the phone. Not because there's a problem with the phone, but because with now I've lost connection from my body and my ability to attune to you and be aware of myself.
So we're wanting to make sure in this episode to have a look at the things that can become crutches and how you actually liberate yourself from that, where you can have lifelong pleasure and how to access that. So I'm quite excited for that.
Well,
but anyways, let's go back to
what is the orgasm
Yes.
gap? Well, I actually would like to read some of the statistics. This was a study here, differences in orgasm frequency among gay, lesbian, bisexual, and heterosexual men and women in a U.S. national sample.
Okay, great.
So in this sample, they were looking at, what was it? It says like 52,000 people. And then they break down who identify different ways. But this is an interesting thing. So the percentages here of those who orgasm from a sexual encounter, and it's 95% of heterosexual men have an orgasm. Then beneath that is 89% of gay men, 88% of bisexual men, 86% of lesbian women, and then it drops drastically. 66% of bisexual women, and then lastly of all, 65% of heterosexual women. And then of course they go, well, if you take the heterosexual men and the heterosexual women, there is the biggest difference there.
The biggest gap.
Yeah. And it's a gap of 30%. And I believe that this gap is, don't get me wrong, something to solve. It's a challenge, and it is something that actually really isn't even that much of a challenge, though it challenges many people. It is a common problem, but it is not a normal problem.
We could reframe it as an invitation. So instead of the orgasm gap, it's the orgasm invitation. So if there is a dissonance, if one partner is not able to have that pleasure the same way the other partner is, that's an invitation for them to explore and get to know and find out what's possible. Instead of just saying, there's a gap, oh well.
Well, and then the thing that I get sick and tired of hearing then is the conclusion goes, well, the reason why this is happening is because heterosexual or heteronormative, as it can even be put, sex is a problem because it's only focused on the man's pleasure and it's only focused on penetrative sex, where other people will then use other things of foreplay to bring about orgasm.
It's extremely misinformed because the female anatomy, when it's activated properly and the person really knows how to move and use and breathe into her own anatomy, penetration is an extraordinary and needed experience to access deeper orgasmic experiences and states and pleasure that cannot be accessed externally.
Well, and the thing is that they then say the reason why the gap doesn't happen inside of, for instance, like with lesbian women, is because they then both will go into clitoral stimulation, etc., which is very true. However, when we have had clients who enjoy penetration, and by the way, there are many lesbian couples who enjoy penetration, they will struggle just as much as heteronormative couples with the act of penetration, be it fingers, dildo, strap-on, doesn't matter, just as much as heteronormative couples.
If you don't understand it and someone has pain or has numbness or, I don't know, some kind of something going on and you don't know what to do about it, it's always going to be uncomfortable.
Well, I mean, here's a classic example that we have. There's one partner is struggling because they feel that they're always being pushed into, they feel that they're kind of being penetrated too soon, then it doesn't lead to a pleasurable experience, they start to shut down, and they don't really...
And it hurts.
And so then they don't want to have sex, while the other couple is sitting there saying, I want to have more sex, I really enjoy penetration, I love what it does and how it makes me feel, and like sometimes I just want my partner just to deal with the pain and just feel good. Yeah. And by the way, that was not a heterosexual couple.
Yeah.
That was a lesbian couple. And this isn't just a once-in-a-lifetime type of situation. This is something, again, why I say this is a problem with penetration. This isn't a heteronormative problem.
And we even saw it with gay couples. I mean, we did Bespoke with one, and they just with
bottom and top.
A tiny bit of just very simple adaptations that is amazing and related to your section sex method, they, for the first time, experienced long penetrative pleasure. Like it lasted like 4 or 5 times longer than normal.
Yep.
It felt good to both partners.
And they also went deeper, like physically took the partner in deeper. So on the receiver side, they're like, I went deeper than I ever did. It didn't hurt. Yeah. And he went longer forever, which didn't hurt me. Yeah. And he was able to actually last. And normally it ends up being a shorter thing that's painful.
Pleasure.
Precisely.
Yeah, exactly.
And this thing of sex being too short and being painful, or too long and being painful, and people not feeling enough pleasure and just feeling nothing at all or pain, has been across the board with anybody. So you could even leave out what their sexual orientation is and simply just talk about being a giver and receiver. Receivers have these issues, givers have these issues, and it's because of the way that we go around sex.
And as a population, we have penetration problems. And
yet, at the same time, the solution isn't let's get rid of penetration, which is the part that also bothers me about the studies.
Yes, exactly.
Is they go, oh, well, lesbian couples, they can orgasm more, and it's because they appreciate the clitoris. And don't get me wrong, like, if there's anyone in the world that loves the clitoris, in fact, the CUV complex, it is this man right here. And I'm a huge advocate of the clitoris, so it doesn't mean we leave that out. But if you sort of say that this is the one and only solution, and then we just erase penetration, well, you're actually not listening to the rest of the world, which are not the rest of the world, the majority of the world who says, I actually want to have penetration. I mean, the number one question we get asked around isn't actually how to stimulate the clitoris. It's how do we enjoy penetration?
Exactly.
And that doesn't mean that we leave the clitoris out. In fact, if you really understand anatomy, you will know that you can't have penetration without stimulating the clitoris.
Can you tell us a little bit more about, was there a study about penetration, and like what have we learned so far about its positive effects?
I don't remember the guy's name, but that's why I also then brought it up here, because I wanted to go through this. I think it's really interesting because there are some things here that I was like, oh, I didn't even know this. So by a PhD person by the name of Stuart Brody.
Dr. Brody. Yeah.
Dr. Brody. And it's the relative health benefits of different sexual activities. Check it out. Because this whole article was talking about the benefits specifically of what he's referring to, or they are referring to, as PVI. Penis, vagina, intercourse, which is even worse than the word penetration, but whatever. Yeah. PVI to me sounds a bit like an STD, but
it's just study.
It'll help us speak more quickly about this, though, since we like to be specific on specifically PVI, is that one, as opposed to any other forms of sex, meaning oral sex, meaning anal sex. I do have maybe a little bit there because I'm wondering how they're going about anal sex on this. Correct. So I do see there are limitations to this study, but also finger to finger or finger to orifice, oral sex, as well as even just masturbation for oneself, self-pleasure, did not have the same effects on the overall health benefits as penis to vagina intercourse. And again, because of the study, I don't know how much it really is just penis to vagina intercourse versus penetrative intercourse. Because when we teach
this is the most obvious way they could study it.
This is the way they studied it. So what they're looking
essentially, they're looking at penetration.
Yes. And it is the satisfaction of one's mental health higher with penetration.
Okay.
The ability not to have numbness or pain. The better cardiovascular health. Optimizing one's blood pressure so that it's not too high. Neurohormonal effects boosted specifically by the act of penetration. The biochemistry of ejaculate with penetration also has different health benefits inside of the receiving partner, but also the giving partner. So we're looking at prostate cancer goes down, breast cancer goes down, even immune function and the spread of HIV and other STDs, your immune function goes up from penetrative sex. And this is the part that really surprised me, and I sometimes I'm almost like, is that really right? Like, that they were looking at the study that STDs and HIV were passed less when there is the act of penetration, and they were saying without condoms. And that was the part that I was like, I mean, I'm reporting it because that's what's in there.
Yeah.
I am not recommending people to abandon using condoms at this point.
No.
However, though,
but this is part of the sperm information.
It's just interesting, though, that was something that came up. But let's continue, though. Life expectancy goes up. And so there's just a myriad of benefits that come from penetrative sex. And you know what? These are the statistics. I don't think we need the statistics even. You can just ask couples and people, like, as humans, in general, we like putting things inside of other things.
Well, I'm going to guess that one of the health benefits is because with penetration of the pelvic region, whether it's anal or vaginal, is you're accessing the deeper nerves, the pelvic nerve, the hypogastric nerve, the vagus nerve, which you don't access directly from the external.
True.
genital.
But like even let's say, because it's saying the use of dildos, you could do that. I think there's also something as well, like when we line our bodies up,
Yes.
the amount of body contact and intimacy that is created from bodies being that much in contact.
Well, I think that would then have oxytocin and have like more neural regulation of the nervous system, because you're not by yourself with the computer, you're with another human. So we as mammalian beings need other mammals to regulate ourselves. So why not do it through the act of pleasure?
Exactly. And two, and I mean, I'm like a biomechanics nerd. It's just how I orient. It's one of my areas of genius. And even when I am using my full body while fingering and or even if I were to use my full body while having oral sex, like there is still not the same amount of the ability to really synchronize with one another as when your two midsections are joined, because then you have this full body. And it's the difference between like dancing and doing just like some kind of movement from the top, and then where your whole body is moving and you're close and you see some of the, what is the dance that you're like, is it Kizumba?
Kizumba, yeah.
Where you see these dancers and their whole bodies are like
so sensual,
moving in together.
Yeah.
And you see some of the formal dances, and great, like the waltz is nice and everything, but if your contact is only here, it's never the same as when it's from top to bottom. So anyways, as you see, we believe that this really does matter, and it is something that so many people talk about, and there is a solution, and we've actually even went through the study. So let's talk a little bit
Well, I wanted,
about that.
What is the solution that is offered out there first, and then we can talk about what we're doing. Because there is the general, there's this huge orgasm gap, it's not been solved, but here's how you can attempt to solve it. So what are those?
The typical solutions that are put out there?
Yeah.
Well, the typical solutions that are thrown out there is vibrator and lube. And again, lube, great invention. Should we depend on it? No. Should we learn how our own body mechanics make its own lubrication and how we can optimize it inside ourselves? Yes. And then can we still use the lube even then?
Yes.
Absolutely. Toys, vibrators, for instance. Any problem with those?
Nope.
Not at all. I love to pull out a vibrator. I love to use a vibrator. I love doing techniques where I create vibration with my own mouth and won't go into motorboating right now. And finger, or just, I've had many lovers that are like, almost kind of where they sheepishly will say, like, is it okay that I use a vibrator? I'm like, oh, please, like, pull it out. Let's have fun with this. Let's discover it. Oh, you have 10 of them. All right, let's go through the whole row of them and do this and have fun and experiment, because it's about being curious. However, I've also noticed, though, those lovers will then say, I feel limited by the fact that now if I'm being intimate, that I then have to stop things or pull it out, or we have people that we coach as well who are saying, it's not just my partner that's having a problem. In fact, he loves the toy. It actually makes his job easier, but I would like to just see what it would be like without it, and maybe it just feels more romantic. And which, again, this one study here by Mr. Brody, or Dr. Brody, might not be a Mr. Dr. Brody was finding that even with these things, that it does not compensate for the natural instinct that people have to enjoy penetration. So those are one of the solutions that are put out there. The other solution is that talk about your needs.
Yeah, so more like talk therapy.
Well,
You could talk till your face is blue, though it won't solve the problem.
Yes, exactly. And if you don't know what a solution is, or even if you have never really received a proper, not sexual reproduction education, but a sexual pleasure education, and learning how the whole body works as a system, which is the solution that we'll be getting into, is that you then will then say, well, actually, this is how I do it. And in fact, what happens is that the thing that we become dependent on, and or rather even frustrated with, is if we talk about it, the only thing that we say, no, that has to be done exactly this way, and I can only come this direction.
Which we can discuss more in the second half, but I find that when I start mentalizing a problem that actually requires a physical solution,
yes.
I get more and more agitated, because it's not actually bringing me more in touch with if my back really hurts, and just talking about it's not going to make it feel better.
Yes.
I need to stretch, or I need to get a massage, or I need to get an adjustment, or whatever the thing is. Maybe but something's really bad and I need to get surgery. But whatever the case might be, just talking about my back pain is not going to make it go away.
And if you've only been given one solution that doesn't really solve the root cause, but it only deals with the symptom, then you will obsess on that.
Like my posture, for example.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And so you're like, oh no, it has to always be pushed in and held for 3 seconds right here, and that's how you resolve the back pain. It's like, well, that actually resolves the symptom, but if you understand the whole structure and you go, well, you know what, it's your posture, but the reason why you have the posture problem is because one of your shoes is shorter than the other one, and so you're walking always this way and you aren't working with your own body mechanics, then you're always going to have that, and so then you'll never find the actual deeper solution that allows for that true deep connection there. So again, we're not, for those of you who love lube, love lubrication, love vibrations and different sensations, and love toys, we're in the same tribe. However, at the same time, we want to show you that there is a vast potential so that options don't become crutches.
Exactly. That you can actually expand your knowledge base, your sensorial experience, just through learning maybe a different way to breathe, for example.
And even if you don't identify it as a crutch, it's just like, hey, you want to try something different.
Exactly.
And then if you don't like that, go right back to whatever it is that you're wanting to do. So this is completely natural that there can be even some like resistance around, oh wait, are they saying that what we've done is wrong?
Yeah, we're not shaming anyone. We're just wanting to give first of all, there is a solution to the orgasm gap. Secondly, the solutions being offered are not going to resolve the orgasm gap. That's why they're saying it's unsolvable, even if it can bring things a little closer at times. And so what we're setting you up is, like, well, what is the solution? And I think if we're looking directly, specifically at penetration issues, which is what we said. So anybody across the board having issues with penetration resulting in a pleasurable experience, whether or not it's orgasm, that's a next thing, but a pleasurable experience. This is not frequent on the receiving end a lot of the times, but also on the giving end with what we call friction sex, which is what you're going to see in porn, which is almost everybody's sex education at this point. And porn is entertainment, it is not education. So learning how to have sex, make love through that vehicle is not going to be helpful.
And by friction sex, we mean what you typically see in porn, which is, how do you have more pleasure? Well, you go harder, you go faster, and you go longer with something that's bigger. And
you go in quickly because you're going to lose your erection.
Yes.
So there's all these factors in friction sex that really don't work for both bodies.
So the criticism actually, again, should be directed towards the way that we're having penetration. That's why I say this is, again, it is a problem of how we do penetration. It is not a problem with men not caring about female pleasure.
And we have found that even women, say with endometriosis, which is a really stressful and painful condition to have, especially when it comes to penetration, that they even can come to a place where penetration is enjoyable when they and their partner learn a different approach.
I would even go so far as to say the way that we're having penetration that creates the orgasm gap is also creating the toxic relations. In South Africa, they found that sexual dysfunction leads towards violent behavior, and violent behavior leads towards sexual dysfunction. It's the chicken or the egg. They create this cycle there, and eventually you have to look at it holistically if you want to really have a solution that covers it systemically. Well,
I'm really ready for the explicit part because I want to get into some juicy details.
Well, I know you do. And hey, we have the guy here saying, let's slow down a little bit and take our time. Because there are a couple other things that I do want to address, because people might say, well, you didn't actually look at all the solutions that are typically given. The other one is that it should be oral sex is the solution. Again, not a problem with oral sex, but as we showed in the study, even oral sex doesn't create the same levels, especially on like the levels of the hormonal and neurotransmitters that get exchanged when you have penetrative sex, such as.
And a lot of people don't orgasm with oral. So. Well,
there's a whole other thing too with that, where a person's like, I don't end up feeling comfortable with it, but things such as prolactin. That your prolactin levels and feelings and reporting of sexual satisfaction aren't as high when it doesn't involve pleasurable penetrative sex. And that is one of the caveats of the study. It says that it needs to be actually done skillfully, and the person needs to be able to receive it, what was it, like they said, receive it openly or something. But basically, like, it needs to be pleasurable and done in a way that creates pleasure as well. Now, they don't give any indications on how to do that.
Well, this is the thing. There's very little how-to anywhere around penetration, as far as I can tell.
Which is, again, why we made the study on it. And that was why then the study actually got accepted, because we said, this is the problem.
Yes.
And we could have another protocol that's on foreplay. In fact, we have plenty of them. We're going to be teaching a class soon now, granted, depending on when you watch this, that will probably already have been made, or it'll be live. But this understanding of sex as a system creates change on penetration, oral sex, the way you use manual stimulation, and even how you understand the energetics between two people's bodies. Now, the thing that they suggest is turn taking.
Okay.
And I just want to bring this up because there's this myth.
Is that part of the sensate therapy?
No, this is just kind of like the general idea that the only way that partners are going to, and specifically heterosexual partners are going to enjoy the sexual experience is that they have turn taking.
It's Monday, so it's my turn to come, and it's Tuesday, it's your turn to come.
Well, maybe it's not even separated day by day. That you'd be surprised. I've definitely heard extreme versions of that. Yeah. And again, it can be very fun to do that, where like, hey, today I'm just going to focus only on your pleasure, or today, but that does not mean though that it's impossible for the two to have it together. And it also isn't this ideal of, only once when the stars align are couples able to have an orgasm together in penetration, and we're going to romanticize this.
Yes.
Which, yes, it's a really great thing, but this idea of turn taking is I will please you, you get your one, you please me, I get my one, and we're done.
Yeah. Or what did you say, race and chase?
I call it how it really ends up happening in my book, Optimal Sex, is I call it the race and chase. Because how that practically ends up happening is one person's like trying to race to have the orgasm, the other person's chasing after that. And it's like, who can go first? Because if I don't get it, then the other person's going to stop. And if they don't get it, then the other one. Or the other way is, even if you want to do it both for each other, you're like chasing
two unsatisfied people who just are grasping at straws in that case.
Because what ends up happening is that when orgasm becomes a natural effect of penetration done masterfully, and by masterfully I don't mean that you need to then take 12 years. Like literally, our bespoke clients, they get this in a day.
Well, when we did the study, people sometimes were only doing one of the practices once.
Exactly.
And having huge results.
I mean, 15 minutes bespoke coaching, practiced once, already have the orgasm gap disappears.
Yeah.
However, when we work with a client, maybe the first day or the second and the third day, all of a sudden they start going into different states of possibility that they're like, wow, I've been with my partner for 20 years. I have done and learned everything that was out there. But now that I have actually embraced what you were doing and become curious about it and learn to attune to my partner and become aware in these ways, now I start to have these experiences that used to be a once in a lifetime on the regular.
Yeah,
and
because
it revolutionizes the people's relationships.
Well, the work is about allowing you, the viewer, the listener, you have an erotic intelligence. We're going to talk about that, I think, more on the explicit side. Yes. But you have an erotic intelligence. This helps you, what we're talking about, suction sex, I'm just going to name it, suction sex, helps you, invites you, brings you into a relation, maybe reignites that relation with that erotic intelligence.
Well, before we jump into, because I really want to dive deep in the erotic intelligence, because this is going to be the key factor in the how, and we're going to go into that into the memberships part, we'll jump to in a second, is I'd love for you just to go through and like talk about what, or even just list out what were the things that came from the study when we combine both our methodologies, because it isn't just suction sex, it's also understanding the psychosexual being that is with you. And this is where your genius really came together and complemented with what I brought to that study. And so this was 111 different people. I think for the formalized study, was it like around 44 couples, something like that?
I think it was 84 people. So
84
42.
people, 42 couples. But did you?
Yeah, before I say that though, the other solution that's often given if there's a penetration issue is sensate therapy.
Yes, okay.
And which has a penetration component near the end of the therapeutic thing, but it's really allowing people to sensualize. So we're not negating that these things are actually helpful, but when you finally come to the point where you actually want to experience penetration, there's no education, no proper education.
Sensate therapy is the perfect complement
exactly
to our protocol because it allows for the exploration of sensation between each other's bodies, which then really preps the body for penetration. However, if you don't understand the mechanics of penetration and you go to the normal friction sex base, which is what we've seen, it will negate that, and people will then still have these problems.
Correct. So the results, I'll just pull them up here and just list them out really quickly. And please keep in mind, this was a study. So people were not forced, but they had to do homework like on a weekly basis and report in. So it's not even as lovely as it could be if you're just more playful.
Because it was over 8 weeks, and so they had to do a certain practice each week, and then they had to come and be in a live
plus
report.
Do life and kids and stress and everything. And so sometimes they only did the practice once. And even with that, there was this report of an increase in the sexual satisfaction, which is huge, right? We're already talking about like that's rarely happening.
I mean, there's so many results. Let's just list them off quickly.
Sexual satisfaction went up, sexual communication up, female sexual functioning up, attachment insecurity actually went down. So people felt more secure together. One of the love scales we used went up. Inclusion of other in self, so like really considering the other person, being more sensitive, went up. We had the frequency that people were having sex went up, but that could have just been because they had to do the homework. But that's cool. That's cool. Sexual duration, like the length of time they connected, went up. The penetration length, meaning the length of time they actually did penetrative sex, went up. Feeling like sex was a routine went down. Any feelings of sexual shame went down. Sexual confidence went way up.
The intimacy scale that we designed, I'm just going to interject on this, went up, and it was because we had to make a new intimacy scale because we knew that some people, and we get this a lot with clients, they'll say, yeah, my sex life's a 9 or 10. And then if they then went through this, they'd say, oh, we're better than before, but so then how would you rate it? And then it would be off the scale. So we actually had to make a new scale specifically for the study that said, if you had 0 point being where you started at, did you get worse from it or did you go up?
Correct,
So with that scale in mind, not only did our scales all show going up from just the standard, 0 to 10, or I forget if it was it 7 or a 15 point scale? One of the two. It's getting a little nerdy now.
Yeah, I don't want to be nerdy. Give this and jump into some juicy stuff.
On this new scale that we had though, we also then showed that people that already were in an optimal relationship and thought everything was perfect went, wow, it's become even better.
Exactly.
So what else went up then?
Sexual closeness before sex. So people felt actually closer before they were even sexual.
Which means that they are then overall having a better, closer sexual life.
And then the sexual closeness after sex also went up, which is really important because sometimes you're so disappointed or whatever's happened that you feel less connected.
Which that creates a nice little loop, because if you enjoy it more after, then you're also more likely to want it more before.
So those are the results that we had that are, I think, useful for this discussion today. And I would just love to switch over because I'm ready to really share some stories and get into more of, well, how do we do this? How do we, with the situation that we're in, decrease or even fully eliminate the orgasm gap in a penetrative sexual experience?
And right before we do that, there's one last thing I want to say, is that even with friction sex and the way that things are, we're still looking at 65%, which is the lowest statistic, which are heterosexual women, are still reaching orgasm during penetration.
Yes.
Which means that even when the cards are stacked against the body mechanics, our bodies do find a way. So I just want to state that to say that, like, our bodies are incredible. So no matter where you are in this, just know that you have an amazing gift with you. And let's go ahead now and jump into the explicit side.
Awesome.
To join us for the complete and explicit version of the podcast, simply upgrade your membership and gain instant access.